Hello, and welcome to the Thinking Elixir podcast, where we cover the news of the community and learn from each other. My name is Mark Erickson.
And I'm David Bernheisel.
Let's jump into the news.
All right. Hey, first one, Plug. Plug is a pretty central piece of the Elixir ecosystem, especially on the web, and it gets a new release, 1.17. That's right. This is one of those good Elixir libraries that is not version 0. This is actually a good old 1.0 release at some. This happened a while ago, but just good to see that. So it's 1.17, and the big things in there: plug.debugger. We see this a lot in Phoenix projects, by the way. So when you throw an exception, plug.debugger is the thing that you see in that exception screen. And plug.debugger gains dark mode. All right. so Phoenix core contributor Stefan DE adds dark mode support to plug debugger. It's great for those developing in the dark, avoiding the cold white burning of your retinas when errors occur. So that's nice, and it looks nice too. That's probably the most visible change that you're going to see when upgrading. But there's also a couple other goodies in the release. For example, plug.debugger also gains links to the functions that are involved in the exception in hex docs. That's really nice. Usually you hit that exception and you're like, okay, what do I do? Now I have to go immediately to hex docs, and now a link is going to get you right to it, which is pretty nice. A couple other things is that they're deprecating a couple of fields on there: rec cookies, cookies, and response cookies. Those fields are now deprecated in favor of the functions to access them, which is pretty nice. So if you're accessing those directly on the plug.con, I guess, then you might want to switch over to using the functions instead of just straight up access to those fields. And keeping up with OTP, they also added SSL certificate validation for anything that provided to plug on the key of cert keys. This is just keeping up with some good security. And then lastly is supporting the relative file underscore relative file to the plug editor replacements. Okay, if you don't know what that means, it's okay. And so one of the things that Phoenix is really pushing out there is the ability to jump from a file directly to your editor. So if there's an exception occurring, like it's coming from a file, right? And if you want to just go straight to editing that file to fix the exception, plug editor is an environment variable that you can configure, your logs, for example, to use when you want to go edit those, go send them straight to your editor. And relative file is just a way to help out with that, to make it not absolute pathing everywhere. And there's probably more to it. Anyway, all that to say is your DevX experience is getting a little bit better all the way around. Plug debugger, linking to hex docs and dark mode, and plug editor, all that's really good. And then the non-DevX thing is deprecating the cookies fields. So go check that out and upgrade Plug. Again, Plug's one of those things you always want to keep updated. It's a pretty central library to most web applications in Phoenix and Elixir worlds. So you want to keep up on those.
Today's Thinking Elixir show is sponsored by our friends at Gigalixir, the premier deployment platform for Elixir and Phoenix projects. If you use the promo code THINKING during signup, you get 20% off the standard tier prices for an entire year. That's thinking at gigalixir.com, or visit gigalixir.com/thinking to sign up today and get 20% off your first year. A big thanks to Gigalixir for sponsoring the show. And next up, there's a Phoenix PR that's actively in the works. So it's still considered a draft. This may be premature to even talk about it, but I thought it was cool, and I want this to happen. So I'm willing this into existence in some fashion.
Yeah.
But what this is so it's a PR that's actively being developed, and there's involvement from Jose. So because of that, it looks like there's a greater chance of this actually ending up being pulled in. But what it is it's all about co-locating the JavaScript hooks with a component. So you can imagine, when you're writing components and they require some control over the DOM and you need a hook, then the hook is like in this other file, it's getting loaded into app.js, and it's a separate place, and you have to think about it separately. And then your component can declare the Phoenix hook inside it, but it's developed and stored in two different places. So this PR is about, hey, can we co-locate that? Is there a way to bring them all into a single component, which I think is like super cool if you're wanting to create like a component library where it's like all of it's here in this one library. I just love that idea. So anyway, I think it's exciting. I don't know if it's ever going to get accepted, but I love the idea and the direction. I think it'd be one of those developer experience improvements for when we're working with hooks.
Just to give you an idea of what this PR is trying to do, so in your component, you've got your sigil H in there, right? Your typical HTML that goes in there and all the typical iView components that you can call, expressions and such. Well, it looks like they would look for the script tag in there too. And so if it finds the script tag, that's the co-located part, right? It's right next to your HTML. It pulls that script out and throws it into a proper JavaScript file. It kind of compiles them all together, I guess. From there on out, I'm not really sure how it's going to technically accomplish this, but then it gets it into your JavaScript pipeline for compilation and builds and such. So we'll see how that actually turns out. Yep. But at least that's what the PR is saying for the moment, right? Like that would be the ideal. We'll see how far we can get though.
Yeah.
Which honestly, just looking at it, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Vue.
Oh,
VUE.
Yeah.
VUE.
The JavaScript front-end framework. Yeah.
They do a similar thing. You've got your template and your scripts, co-located in the same file. So it'd be .vue, right? So it feels a little bit like that. That's the effect that they're going for. Maybe. We'll see. All right, next up, Fine has an example project. Fine, if you haven't heard of Fine before, go listen to our episode with Jonathan Klosko, who talks about it. It is the C++ NIF integration layer with Elixir projects. You can think of it like that, kind of like Rustler and Ziegler, but Fine.
And for C++, yeah.
And for C++, yeah. So we talked to Jonathan back in episode 244, so you can find out more about that there and how it's originally shipped alongside of Python X, so you can get the context of how this is being used. But it's not directly about Python, so ignore the Python part of it. That's just why they brought it about. And so if you're curious of how to use Fine, that's the news here that we're talking about today, is that they've added an example project, or Wojtek Maka rather added an example project to the repo. So if you go to Elixir NX /fine on GitHub, you'll now see in the main repo, there's an example folder in there, and that's got a whole little project in there. The example project is super small, right? It's just for example, this is what it does. It's example.add 1 and 2, right? That's the Elixir function you would call. And Fine is going to usher that into C++ world, do the arithmetic, and return back the result for you on all that through C++ and Fine and Elixir. So there you go. If you're curious about how to use it, now there's a good little project.
Yeah, it's just an interesting idea because I've talked with people who were doing, you'd think nerves, right? But it's not nerves. It's like full-fledged Phoenix applications, but wanting to talk to hardware, wanting to connect up to these drivers and these other interfaces, and you need something, and they didn't want to use Rust, right? Because the developers hey, we know C, we know C++, so something like this would be like a great option for a team like that. It's like we already have the familiarity with C, C++, and we already have code libraries that are doing this. We just want to integrate. So now the example projects make it super easy to see, how do I connect those dots? How do I actually make this work for my Elixir app?
Yeah, I keep on thinking about these kind of drivers to things like that. Everyone else in the world's going to know the right thing, and I just know the wrong thing here. But when I think about nerves, I always think of those little tiny Zigbee devices, which is that's not nerves, right?
Right, yeah.
Nerves would be like the controller that receives all that stuff that is powered by mains or something lightweight, but the power is more than just a little coin cell battery most of the time, right? The coin cell battery stuff is like the Zigbee devices that you just have out, spread around your house or whatever that lasts for a year on that battery. But nerves isn't the thing that is on that little device. That is probably Arduino-like thing, right? That's where the Arduinos come in. Nerves is the thing that could help receive all those connections. Yeah, lots of custom little C drivers for, especially in that world. And so on that controller, Fine would be really nice on that part of things, like driving LED lights or something like that, right? Yeah. Revealing of how David here doesn't really understand nerves very well, but every time I think about it, I have to always correct myself, and one day I'll stop having to correct myself.
All right, and next up, there is a new library from BitCrowd for RAG. And RAG is Retrieval Augmented Generation. Now, if you've been paying attention at all to the AI space, you will have heard RAG a lot. And I remember I was at a Google conference in Vegas, and they were talking about RAG, and I was like, that's where I started really getting my head around what is this thing. So yeah, it's really exciting to have a more mature, full-featured solution for RAG in the Elixir community. There are a number of different RAG libraries or projects that were started. I welcome a great solution because it's something I wanted to have for my own AI stuff, but I didn't want to have to figure it all out and go build it because it's just too much to take on. And also be doing like the AI LLM LangChain side, which is what I'm doing. So there's a blog post to go along with this. So BitCrowd is a consultancy, but they have a blog post that outlines what this does, explains it, gives diagrams, and really just to kind of take a little bit of that information and put it in here. It helps with multiple stages of the pipeline. And the first stage is ingestion, which is you have raw documents. Maybe it's code, maybe it's PDFs or Markdown or something like that. And you need to get that chunked and broken up, vectorized, and put into a vector database. So it helps with that part, with the ingestion, getting into a vector database. And then it also helps with the retrieval part, which is I have a user query. I need to turn that into vector tokens to figure out how do I search this in that vector database and then get those little chunks back. So it helps with the retrieval. It also then helps with the augmentation, which is combining your LLM prompts in your system prompts and your messages with the context and the chunks that are coming back from your database, and then putting all that back together to go to the LLM. And so it can give a more complete answer of, making commentary and quoting important factors or linking to documents and things like that. So that's what RAG is all about. Really, the whole goal of RAG is to limit hallucinations, right? So if you're trying to ground the answers that it's giving into something real, and also lots of times, like if you look at I think it's the current OpenAI, I think it's March 2023 or April 2023 was their cutoff date, something like that. So there's no new information from that date. So if you want current information, you use a RAG to help augment that. So yes, I'm super excited to see this. I really looking forward to playing with it and trying it out. I just wanted to put that on people's radar, let them know that that is there. If that's something you've been looking for and wanting to start using, there's another RAG option to check out.
Nice. All right, next up, Expert LSP. We haven't talked about this in a while, huh? Expert LSP, what is it? It is the built-in Elixir LSP, which is not available yet. So don't go looking for it. But it now has a website. So expert-lsp.org. And that's all the news there is about this. There's nothing on the website. it just says coming soon. That's all it says. It's empty.
But there's a placeholder now.
But it's there. Yeah, it's there. So I don't know if you have some home system or something that scrapes websites, you might want to put expert-lsp.org on that and see when it updates and when it changes, so you can be the first to know when something is there. Judging by the footer here, it says built with Tableau, TSS, and a little love. I bet this is the handiwork of our good friend Mitchell Hanberg, who's part of the Expert LSP team, along with the other LSP creators out there. So anyway, just a little excitement. It's not really a tease, but hey, the fact that they have a website, maybe that means something's around the corner. I don't know. We'll find out eventually, I guess.
At least if nothing else, the domain is held. Yeah, so. And next up, there's a project that was brought to our attention that we hadn't really heard about or thought about before. It's called PinchFlat. And what this is it's a project for downloading YouTube content locally. So specifically, say you want to download a particular channel or a playlist. It has the user interface for defining what it is you want to collect and automatically have checked and downloaded and processed and put locally. It's not for playing the YouTube content. It's just for fetching it. So why are we talking about this on the show today, right? So it's built in Elixir. That's why. And that was an interesting idea, right? So it's got a number of like over 2,000 GitHub stars on the project. It's open source. It comes with a single Docker container for hosting it. So if you want to run it on an unraid system, you can easily load that in. And, it's the kind of thing where I've thought about doing this because, I've got younger kids and I don't want to give them full YouTube access necessarily, but there are certain channels that we are okay with them watching. And, hey, if I could have something that would just automatically download that, throw it into my Plex server and let them keep up to date on the channels they care about, something like that. It's already got built-in support for Plex, Jellyfin, and Kodi for those who want to archive media and host it personally. The other reason I think it's worth mentioning is for people who are looking at Elixir applications and they're still in that learning phase, like I want to figure out how a non-trivial application works. This is something that you might be interested in looking at because it's probably going to have, I'm just guessing, it's probably going to have something like background jobs for doing these queries and checking out. It might be a fun project to check out for that reason.
Yeah, we've previously recommended looking at something like Nerves Hub as a like large project to look at for Phoenix, applications or and other Elixir applications that kind of like deal with the whole gamut of things, right? It's Nerves Hub. If you haven't heard of it before, it's the way of managing all your Nerves devices. Here I am today saying I don't know anything about Nerves, but I know about this. So it manages all your Nerves devices and specifically also pushing firmware updates over the air to them. Mm-hmm. And it was typically a good project to look at for like good examples of how to do a thing, in a large project and how to organize your things. Around the time then, I think Phoenix 1.3 had come out. Nerves Hub was around same kind of time. So folks were wondering about contexts and how to really do that well. Nerves Hub was a good way of looking at a good example of that. But now, Pinchflat might also be a good exhaustive code base to look at for examples on how to do a thing. All right. Well, hey, next up, there's a new Elixir and TreeSitter powered syntax highlighter out in the Elixir community and the Rust community, for what it's worth. And it supports, as of this moment, terminal and HTML outputs. This is called Autumnus. I think I'm saying this right. It's Autumnus, maybe. It's like autumn, the season.
With US after
with US, yeah. This is created by Leandro, who is the same person that maintains MDEX. For what it's worth, MDEX is the Markdown library for parsing Markdown, and Beacon CMS. So he's all over the place. He's evidently a Elixir developer to watch. And so what's special about Autumn? Autumn is, again, that syntax highlighter. It's powered by TreeSitter. TreeSitter is a tokenizer, I believe, that can stream files and tokenize it, so it gives you a kind of a generic AST of things, which is really helpful for understanding how to, highlight those things, to know when a thing is a thing. When is it a string? When is it an atom? When is it a function? That stuff. TreeSitter is also used in NeoVim a lot, by the way. NeoVim's the best editor in the world. No bias, but NeoVim has a lot of theming and injections and a lot of other configuration around how to use TreeSitter because it needs syntax highlighting as well for the editor, right? To make it pretty in your editor. Why am I mentioning NeoVim? Well, it's because Autumn uses TreeSitter and NeoVim themes. All right, so now all those worlds are now connected and we understand why. But Autumn's whole purpose is to give you HTML output on the other side or terminal output with the typical ANZ color escapings and all that kind of stuff. Supports language auto detection, has, formatting options and things like that. And why is that interesting today? Well, it's not brand spanking new. It's actually been out for a little while, but it's new to me. I haven't heard of it before. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that there's a new release for it, 0.3, I believe. And with this release, they have, by they I mean Leandro, maybe other contributors, they have converted I think it's the TreeSitter part of this. It was using a different Rust package before called Inkjet, I think. Now he's using his own. He's published to Rust Cargo out there his own package that this Autumn Elixir library is now using via Rustler, by the way. So talking about Fine earlier, now this is a good example of Rustler. Autumn is a full tool chain for all that syntax highlighting goodness. Along with that, Leandro's other package got updated. Mark, tell me about that one.
Yeah, so I was looking at Autumn this morning and I was thinking, wow, this looks really cool. How can I possibly use this with Markdown? And because it's like, it's not intended for that. It's like you give it syntax and it can auto detect it, or you tell it what syntax it is and it generates the HTML for it. It's like, wow, I really want to put this with Markdown. So like I have the like a little app I wrote myself for working with LLMs, and I'd like to have Markdown with code highlighting. So then I found MDEX. So MDEX, I guess is how you'd say it, but it's also a Leandro project. It's compliant with Common Mark and GitHub flavored Markdown, with extra extensions as wiki links, Discord Markdown tags, and emoji. And it also supports syntax highlighting out of the box using the Autumn library, which was just an update from like a week ago. So, yay, I get all the things I want. Thank you, Leandro.
Yeah. So I've been saying MDEX. So MDEX, it's just Markdown EX, I guess is the point here. Markdown EX is probably not that I'm running benchmarks or care that much, but MDEX is probably the best Markdown parser in Elixir at this point. So if you need any of that, you should go check MDEX out. All right, last up, not really about Elixir. So it's just more like industry news, right? Mm-hmm. The JavaScript Vue, VUE leader Evan You announces a new toolchain, a new JS toolchain called Vite Plus. And they coin it as Cargo, but for JavaScript. Okay. There's a lot of context here. What is Cargo? It's the all-in-one tool that you could think of for Rust as well, right? Just like Mix is for Elixir, Cargo is for Rust, and JavaScript just doesn't really have one of those tools. Not very well anyway. And there's lots of efforts happening. We can think of Bun. Bun is probably one of those efforts that's trying to become this. You can also think about Deno, however you say that. Mm-hmm. There's an effort on this, but when you're not wanting an alternative runtime, because that's what those are, that's Bun is an alternative runtime, same with Deno. Those are all encompassing tools which have a lot of appeal, but maybe folks, for whatever reason, I don't understand all the reasons here, but maybe you don't want those alternative runtimes and you just want regular Node.js. And as far as I understand, this is where this toolchain can really be appealing to some folks. This was announced at JavaScript World Conference, I think, and just the other day. I've got a couple of links. This is sponsored by an organization called Void Zero. I haven't heard of them before.
Just for clarity, I just checking this out, and it looks like Evan You founded Void Zero, and they have raised $4.6 million in a seed funding. So it is a company dedicated to building an open source, high performance, and unified development toolchain for the JavaScript ecosystem. So
thank you.
That's where it's all coming from.
Right. So thank you. Yeah, that's the lead up, is that that independent fella out there now has a organization where these not inexpensive efforts can be organized. Here's the thing that's coming out of this. They're calling it Vite Plus. Vite is an existing tool that's already out there, but Vite Plus is the thing on top of that. I'm very peripheral to all of this stuff, so I don't know all the details. I'm sure I'm getting some of this wrong. This is what Vite Plus is going to include. All the things, generally, but dev and build via Vite and roll down, testing and benching via Vite test. These are existing tools. Right, you have to kind of glue them all together, right? But lint and format via OXC.
OXC, yeah.
OXC, Documentation via VitePress. It runs TypeScript directly in Node.js, and it includes project scaffolding and code generation, and monorepo task orchestration and caching. So all these points are like one big tool to manage all the things, which is it's an easier decision to make, I guess, when you want to opt into this ecosystem, right? Instead of gluing all these tools together that don't exactly work well together, at least intentionally. That's the end of the announcement there, right? I don't know much more than that, other than just what just popped into my feed and what this voidzero.dev post is about. But here's my reflection on it. Gleam does this really well too, right? And that's a very small community, but Gleam has this all-in-one tool to do all the things that they're basically talking about here. Mix is also, when Elixir came around the corner and Mix, was talked about, like, it was amazing that Mix did so much out of the box. what was that, like 10 years ago plus, right? 10 years ago, all the other development ecosystems looked paltry by comparison. But, JavaScript has evolved a lot. Python has evolved a lot in its ecosystem. Python's also very traditionally looked down upon when it comes to the ecosystem and just managing a project. So there's like 5 different package managers. They all suck until one came around called UV, for Python, which is a Rust thing for what it's worth. That just was like an all-in-one tool to make that Python development easier. And there's been a lot of attempts in this in JavaScript as well to make this all just easier. I think that Elixir, we've already hinted at some of it before, the implication of the LSP being built into Elixir, that's being worked on. It's not there yet, but Expert, that is contributing to this sense of an all-in-one kind of a tool, right? Dev and build is included with Mix. Testing is included with XUnit by default. It's part of the Elixir thing.
Which is Mix run by Mix. Yep.
Mix format's in there. Linting, maybe not so much, but that's a different thing. Credo handles that fairly well, but again, not built in. Documentation is very well, handled in Xdocs and Hex. There's not alternative compilers out there for Elixir stuff, so we don't have this problem. But you can think of like the gradual typing that they're trying to introduce into Elixir Core. You can make that the equivalent here. So that's being built into Elixir and presumably Mix at some point too. Project scaffolding and code generation. That's built in with like these archives that are downloaded, these e-scripts, but that's also managed by Mix.
And you've got like the Phoenix generators and now with the Igniter, getting even further in that direction.
Yeah. So for what it's worth, though, Igniter's not part of all those things. But maybe one day Igniter does become closer or part of Elixir Core or Mix or something like that. That's a dream. There's no one talking about that yet, as far as I know. But it does solve a lot of good problems. Igniter is very compelling. The word here is just a bullet point: project scaffolding and code generation. That doesn't tell me code mods right out of the box. Right. That's what code. That's what like Igniter is. Yeah. Igniter perhaps is maybe doing even more than what they're talking about here. But code mods I first heard about them in JavaScript, so maybe that's commonplace there. I don't know. And then the last one is monorepo task orchestration and caching. I don't really know what that means. All right. Well, I mean, so we went through all the bullet points here, and I just wanted to like reiterate here that like the Elixir ecosystem is pretty darn good, and we don't want to forget that there's a lot that happens in Elixir too, off the backs of a lot of open source contributors. And still, this is Void Zero with a bunch of like seed money getting poured into it now. As far as I know, like the Elixir as the official language doesn't have that still, and is able to have a lot of these kinds of benefits here. That is getting a lot of attention. So I don't have a call to action really, but I want this at least to be a good reminder, at least that like if you work at a company that leverages Elixir, and even if you consider it your secret sauce and you don't want to talk about it because it's your secret sauce and it's what allows some guy named Alex to run 3 Elixir servers and do all the things that an enterprise could typically do, but it's just this one guy Alex. I'm calling back to a good Reddit joke there if you are in the know.
Oh, that Alex.
But,
okay.
yeah, that Alex. You might want to convince your boss or your comp controller or your accountant or whoever to start considering sponsoring through GitHub or whatever's easiest. The EEF, which is going to help coordinate some of these efforts to just continue the ball rolling. We had the interview with them not so long ago about the software bill of materials. That's one effort. But then also like the individual code repositories, like each of the LSP contributors here, they all have sponsorships opened up on GitHub, the expert LSP. So Mitchell and Steve Cohen and Lucas Samson at Elixir LSP, they're all joining forces to make the Elixir ecosystem that much better, to have a coherent and one experience that's just better for everybody, right? And that's not the only projects, right? Like there's other projects out there. Anyway, so I'm not asking for folks to like flood all of these, projects and start pushing code and stuff for all these JavaScript-like ecosystem features. But I am asking that if you've been benefiting from that, I want us to realize that there is a lot of time and effort that goes into making that a good experience. And so if there are people involved in making that experience good, and they need some more time and money to support themselves to have the time to do it, I really recommend that you take a day this weekend or something, considering your personal efforts that you can do here to support this, but then also your company, which is financially benefiting from all these things, to consider having a conversation with them to start contributing financially as well. And I don't even care what they're contributing to. Like, just anything out there is going to be really helpful to the ecosystem at large. If your company has an interest in the security aspect of things, and the EEF security working group is going to be very happy to receive some donations and or membership fees. But then also particular projects out there, if we need DevX experience, improvements, and people are always complaining about LSPs on their dev machines, then go throw some sponsorships at the expert LSP folks. It's worthwhile. It means something. All right. Well, that's the end of that. I just thought that was massively interesting to see Vue get that kind of corporate-ish backing, at least seed money backing, to really take another stab at improving the JavaScript ecosystem. And, we're not immune to that as the Elixir folks, but if that's interesting to you, it looks like there might be a future for, at least on the Phoenix asset pipeline too. Maybe the Phoenix asset pipeline can also benefit from some of these efforts that the JavaScript folks are doing with Vite Plus. Obviously not in this very moment, but later on when there's something there.
Yeah, there's a couple thoughts I have about JavaScript in general. So one is JavaScript doesn't have a standard library, right? Like Elixir does. Like just all the built-in functions about how do I work with strings? How do I work with integers? How do I do all these things? JavaScript has a very small bit of I can convert between types, but that's it. Like that's why the whole left pad thing happened. And that's why when you do an npm install, it's why when you do an npm install on something large, you have like millions of indirect packages that get loaded in. It's because they don't have a standard library. It's a coping mechanism. For me, just adds more appreciation for what's in Elixir. It's not just Elixir the language. It's like, there's this whole standard library, right? That we all benefit from, that we all are just building on. And a lot of that was originally inherited from Erlang too. The other thing, just a thought, I guess, is because the JavaScript community is so sprawling, it's large, right? It's large and it's been around a long time, but it's so sprawling. I think they kind of have to do something big and splashy just to try and herd the cats, just to funnel attention in one direction to say, we need to consolidate some stuff here. And maybe a lot of that money is just to help market this as let's try and build some standard tooling. But whatever the case, I'm super grateful for what we have in Elixir, and it doesn't require this kind of financial involvement just to make it happen, right? We have an incredible community, so grateful for that.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us next time on Thinking Elixir.